Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at Alone in the Dark by Testament off of their classic album The Legacy. Now they did re-record this in 2001 and that can be found on the First Strike Still Deadly album. And I really like what they did with one of the riffs on that re-recording, and they are actually playing it live the new way as well. So I'm going to touch on that one difference for you because I think it's important to really wrap your head around the track and what they've done with it. So let's go ahead and get tuned up. We're in standard tuning. And the first thing that we hear to kick off the track is a very melodic solo by Alex Skolnick. So let's do two passes here. I'll do a quick pass with the rhythm guitar so that you can see what's going on underneath the solo. And then I'll layer up the solo on top of it for you, and then we'll break it all down. Here we go with a quick performance. So let's talk about the rhythm guitar underneath the solo first. It's a very simple part, just providing a nice backdrop for Skolnick's melodies. We're going to start off with an open A power chord and let it ring for 2 complete measures. And then we're going to go to an F power chord, which is the first fret of the low E string. After we've let that ring for 2 measures, come back to the open A for 2 measures. Now we're going to go to an F power chord again, but this time it's an octave higher than the first F that we had just a moment ago. We're going to root this one off of the F that's found on the 3rd fret of the D string. So in this case, we've got the 3rd fret on the D string, 5th fret on G, and 6th fret on B. That feels a little awkward. You could get away with just doing a 2-string power chord, just fret the 3rd and the 5th on the D and the G. Okay, but I'm pretty sure on the album it's a 3-string power chord that's ringing. Okay, a little bit fuller of a chord. Okay, and that's really the part. We go back and repeat that progression. A again, to the low F, back to A, and then to the high F. But that second time, we're only going to let the high F ring for 1 measure instead of 2, because then we're going to jump up and do a little climb up the A string. So we start on the 5th fret of A, which is a D power chord. Go up a whole step to the 7th fret, E, and then up 1/2 step to the 8th fret, F. Okay, and make sure you palm mute those first 2 power chords, the D and the E. And there's a little random slide before we get into the main riff. Okay, I know it's a simple part, but for the sake of completeness, let's slow it down with some scrolling tabs so that everyone can follow along. Okay, let's jump into Skolnick's solo. It's a really melodic solo with a lot of neat ideas going on, so let's break it down a phrase at a time. The first phrase goes like this. So we're starting off in A harmonic minor here. We're going to start on the 14th fret of G, then come up to the B string, 12 and 13. Okay, so we have a hammer from 12 to 13 and then a hammer pull. Coming back to the G string, 14, and then 13 to 14 hammer. So that first little bit. Now we just repeat that. Now we have, so we're going to bend the 15th fret on the B string. And if you really listen to the album, you know, there's some good vibrato on that one. Try to duplicate that if you can. And then release it. And we want to hit that 15th fret again. And then 13 and 12. Okay, so bend 15, release it. Down to 13, 12. Now we want to roll that first finger down to the 12th fret of the G string. Now 14 on D. Rolling that third finger again up to the G string to get the 14th fret. So that whole first phrase, nice and slow, goes like this. Now we get into a phrase that involves sweep picking and a scale run. Sounds like this. Okay, so we start off with an A minor triad sweep pick. You want to slide into the 17th fret on the high E string, pulling off to 12. Now we're going to use a series of upstrokes to get the next notes. 13th fret on the B string, and then 14 on both the G and the D. Okay, so you'll want to think ahead there and roll that third finger across the D and the G. Once you hit that 14th fret on the D, pull off to the 10th fret. A little bit of a stretch there. Now, okay, right to get into our scale run, we have this little pull off from the 12th to the 10th fret on A, and then down to 13 and 12 on the low string. Hit that 13th fret twice. So that whole little sweep pick. Okay, now we get into a scale run. Okay, now we're not mixing the order of the notes up here, so it's not a super tricky thing for the fingers, but it is triplets that have to be played pretty precisely. So our first couple of beats, we're starting on the 10th fret of the D string, and then 14, 12, 10 on A, and then 13, 12 on E. And now our next couple of beats. Okay, we're just going up a scale pattern, starting that low E string, 10, 12, 13, and then up to A, 10, 12, 14. Okay, and then we repeat that idea, starting on the 10th fret of the D string. We fall down those same notes, so 10 on D, 14, 12, 10 on A, and then 13, 12, 13 on the low string to finish off that scale run. So nice and slow, the scale run part. Okay, let's put the sweep pick and the scale run all together, nice and slow. Okay, there's a little bit of a random slide at the end before he jumps up. And gets into the next little melody that involves a lot of bending strings. So that is the 20th fret on the B string. You want to bend that 3 times. So you bend, release, and bend it again. Okay, then you jump up to the 19th fret on the high E string, bend that a half a step, and release. down to the 17th fret. Now we want to string skip to the G string, bending the 19th fret on the G half a step. And then, okay, so that's bending the 19th fret, half a step again, releasing, pulling off to 17, back to 19. Okay, so that whole little bending melody. Now, let's finish this solo off. We're coming back to the 14th fret on G. Now, that's a 15 to 12 pull off on the B string. Think ahead so that you can roll that first finger down to the 12th fret on G. Back to 14. Hit 14 one more time. Down to 12. Now, okay, a little arpeggio playing here. We're really playing arpeggios out of the A minor scale. So we're starting with an F major 7 arpeggio here. We're starting on the 15th fret of D, 14th fret of G, 13th fret of B, 12th fret of E, and then 13th fret of E. That's an F major 7 arpeggio. Then we're going to throw a G in there as well on the 15th fret, because now that gets us up into our D minor arpeggio. Okay, and that's a 17 to 13 pull off, down to 15 on B, and then do that same pattern a whole step up for an E minor arpeggio. 19 to 15 pull off on E, down to 17 on B. So those last couple of notes is 17 and 19 on the high E string. Bend 19 a half a step and slowly release. And our final note is the 18th fret on the B string. So that final phrase, nice and slow. Okay, let's put the whole thing together nice and slow with some scrolling tab. Now we get into the main riff, which accounts for a large percentage of the song. So here we go with a performance of that. So it's a pretty straightforward but very effective riff. The first measure sounds like this. Okay, so we're going to hold an A power chord. We stab the A power chord, 2 chugs on open A, stab it, 2 chugs. Okay, and for our final beat, we're going to go to an E flat power chord, first fret of the D string. Okay, so our first measure. Measure number 2 is the same rhythmic figure, except we're going to go to a B flat power chord instead of the E flat. So that's the first fret of the A string. Measure 3 is the same as measure 1, just going to that E flat. Now our final measure. So that is 2 chugs on A, followed by the A power chord stab. Now we're going to go down to F, which is the first fret power chord on the low E string. Then up to C power chord, which is the 3rd fret of the A string. Okay, so let's put those 4 measures together nice and slow. Okay, now we're going to repeat the riff. The second time through, there's a different ending. The final measure is slightly different. So I'll just play that second rotation through the riff and then we'll break it down. So as you can see, the first 3 measures are the same. We've got going to the E flat, then to the B flat, back to the E flat. And then our final measure is just A power chord stab, give it a beat of rest, and followed by the F and the C power chords on beats 3 and 4. And then repeat. Let's play all 8 of those measures nice and slow. So there's the main riff. Now, before I slow it down with some scrolling tab, just one thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's that on the album, that riff has been double tracked, and the second guitar part is playing a fuller voicing of the A power chord. So it really provides a lot of emphasis to that riff, especially those A power chord stabs. Okay, so the second guitar that they've layered up is playing the exact same riff, except instead of just playing an A power chord like we were doing with that first guitar, they're playing an A power chord slightly different. Okay, so the A power chord that you're going to want to do if you want to duplicate this part is fret your conventional open A power chord, but then you're going to stick your pinky out on the 5th fret of the B and the E string, so you could have all 5 strings going. And that's the chord that you hear layered up in that riff, okay? And it comes in right away on the second rotation. So Skolnick finishes his solo. Then there's one repetition of that main riff. Then that second guitar comes in layered underneath there right away. So it really adds a lot of emphasis having that fuller A power chord stabbing going on underneath there. So now that we talked about everything that was done on the album to achieve that sound, let's slow the main riff down with some scrolling tab. The next thing that we have to talk about is the octave melody line that Skolnick plays over the main riff. So the main riff plays twice in the intro and then the octave melody starts. So I'll just do a quick performance of that and then we'll break it down. So a very effective melody performed with sliding octaves that adds a lot of dimension to the part. It starts off like this. So to play this, grab the 12th fret on the A string with your first finger, and then grab the 14th fret on the G string with your pinky. So we're going to have 2 A notes an octave apart. Now you're going to strum through 3 strings, the A, the D, and the G, but you won't hear the D string because your first finger will be lightly muting that off. Okay, so slide into those 2 notes, come down to 11 on A and 13 on G, and then slide down to 8 and 10. Going down one more half step to 7 and 9. Now we're going to come down to 5 and 7, sliding down a half step to 4 and 6, and then all the way down to 1 and 3. At the end, you're going to slide back up to 4 and 6, back to 1 and 3, A power chord. Tack on an F and a C power chord to coincide with the other rhythm guitar, and then just play that melody line exactly the same a second time. And then we get into the main riff. So now that we've broken that down, let's put it together with some scrolling tab. So we're through the intro of the track, and now the main riff keeps playing for a very brief verse and chorus, and underneath the chorus where the vocal line is Alone in the Dark, Skolnick again comes in with that sliding octave melody that we just talked about. And directly out of that chorus comes a new riff that we're going to have to break down next. So I'm going to refer to this as an interlude section. You could probably refer to it as a bridge section as well, but I'm going to stick to interlude. So before we break it down, let's do a quick playthrough tying it all together. So as you can see, the verse consists of 2 rotations of the main riff, and then the chorus consists of 2 rotations, but we get out of it slightly differently on that 4th and final rotation to get into the interlude riff. Okay, so we've been ending it every time with 2 chugs on A followed by an A stab, going to F and then C, so that we can repeat that main riff. That 4th and final time, though, we get out of it. Okay, so we've got that 2 chugs on A followed by an A power chord stab. But now we're going to go to the B flat power chord, 1st fret of the A string. Up a whole step to C on the 3rd fret. Then up another whole step to D on the 5th fret. Okay, so we have this. Now we're going to go up to the 8th fret, an F power chord, but we're going to bar the 2 bottom strings, the E and the A. So we actually have an F/C or F over C if you want to refer to it that way. And we're going to strum the 4 lowest strings. And then we're going to move our ring and our pinky finger down a string, so down to the A and the D string, and hit C power chord off of the 8th fret of the E string. And then we're into our bridge riff. Okay, so the first measure of the bridge riff, we have an open E followed by 3 chugs on the 2nd fret, F sharp. Now we're going to go up to a G power chord on the 3rd fret, sliding back down a half step to that F sharp, followed by 2 more chugs on F sharp. Okay, so there's the first measure, nice and slow. Now our second measure, stick on that 2nd fret and chug it 4 more times. And then we have this to finish it off. So we're going to hit a B power chord, 2nd fret of the A string, snapping off to open strings. And really you only hear that open A nice and strong, but you don't have to be super accurate with that. going up to a C 3rd fret power chord on the A string. Okay, so there's the first 2 measures of that riff, nice and slow. The second half, just repeat that first measure. And now we have a diminished arpeggio, which is harmonized in thirds. Skolnick plays the higher one. The one that I'm just about to show you here is Eric Peterson's part. So that diminished arpeggio starts on the 3rd fret of the A string, and then up to the 1st and the 4th on the D string, 2nd fret on G, 1st and 4th on B, and then 2nd on the E string. And there is the full riff. We play the whole thing again, verbatim, a second time, and then get into another verse. Okay, so nice and slow, that whole riff. And now, as I mentioned, Skolnick harmonizes that diminished arpeggio a 3rd higher. So he plays the exact same riff, except we jump up and play the diminished arpeggio a little bit higher. So we start on the 6th fret of the A string. So you're going to go 6 and 9, and then come up to the D string, 7 and 10, 8 on G, and then 7 and 10 on B. Okay, so Skolnick's part is going to look like this. And then we get back into the main riff for another verse. So there is that interlude riff. Now, before I slow it down to some scrolling tab, I just wanted to mention that this is a riff that they changed on the re-recording on the First Strike Still Deadly album. And I really like what they did with it. And they are playing it the new way live even today. So I just thought that it was cool enough and a big enough change that it's worth talking about. Okay, so what they're doing now, it sounds like this. So some minor changes in there that really add emphasis to the riff. The first change is instead of just palm muting an open E to F sharp at the beginning, we're going to hit some open strings and hammer to the F sharp power chord. So you can hit the open E, A, and D strings all open. They go by so quick it sounds great. And just hammer onto that F sharp power chord. Okay, the rest of that measure is the same until the last 8th note. Okay, we want to release the palm mute and stab that F sharp with an upstroke. So that first measure again, nice and slow. Now measure 2. They put a little gallop in there on beat 2. We want to go down, 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 up, down. Right? So we're staying on that 2nd fret. And that's all chugging away there, down, 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 up, down, and then moving to that B, pulling off up to the C. And the rest of the riff is the same. We're going to repeat that hammer with the same diminished arpeggios as they recorded in 1987. Okay, so let's slow that new way down for you, just so you can see how that's going to look all together a couple of times here. Okay, and then back into the main riff. So now that we've broken that interlude riff completely down, let's slow it down to some scrolling tab. So not a ton of sections to this song, guys. We'll pretty much wrap up what you need to know with the solo section. So let's play through the rhythm underneath the solo before we tackle the solo itself. Here we go. So a really cool rhythm part underneath the solo, and it's a lot of fun to play. That solo section starts. And when we hit that, the rhythm guitar goes to the chords that we had in the intro. So we're going to hold an A power chord for 2 measures. Then down to an F power chord on the first fret for 2 measures. Back to the A. And then that F power chord rooted on the 3rd fret of the D string that's an octave higher than the lower one that we had. Random slide, getting into the next riff. So it's all on the A string, and you can put a palm mute on this whole thing. Now we go open, 7, 5, 3, open, 5, 3, 2. Okay, let's just put those couple of beats together here. Going to finish this off, open, 2, 3, 5, open, 3, and then A power chord stab. And it's really prominent in this riff that we're using that bigger voicing that we had where the second guitar was doubling the main riff. So you're going to hit the open A power chord, stick your pinky out onto the 5th frets on the B and the E. And that's pretty much the riff. The second time they change one note. I'll just play it here first. So just so that we're on the same page, let's go through that nice and slow. We're going open 7, 5, 3, open 5, 3, 2. But now instead of going open 2, 3, 5, we're going to go 3, 2, 3, 5. And then we have the open 3 chord stab. So just that one note difference on that second time through. On the third time through, there's again one note different, but it's a different note. So that third time, we're going open 7, 5, 3, and then we're going 7, 5, 3, 2. And then the rest is the same. Open 2, 3, 5, open 3 chord stab. Let's just put all 3 of those repetitions together. Now, the fourth time through the riff, it's the same as the first time, but a second guitar comes in and plays this really cool rhythmic figure. Okay, so we have some really cool chord voicings going on. The first one is an F major 7 with A in the bass. So we're going to fret F, 3rd fret of the D string, C on 5th fret of G, and E on the 5th fret of B. Adding that open A underneath it all. Really nice chord voicing, even with distortion on. So it's an F major 7 with the 3rd A in the bass. Okay, now our second chord, all that we're going to do is lift our pinky, and our first finger is going to bar the D and the B. So now we have that 3rd fret on the B with our first finger rather than the 5th fret with our pinky. So what we're going to have, open A, 3rd fret on D, 5th fret on G, and 3rd fret on B. Another cool chord voicing, even with distortion on, and that's a D minor 7 with the 5th A in the bass. So I'll refer to those two chords as F major 7 and D minor 7, so you'll know what I'm talking about here as we go through this. So what we're going to do, start this rhythmic figure by stabbing the F major 7, and then 2 chugs on A. Lift your pinky and get the D minor 7, then 2 chugs on A. Then stab the D minor 7 and 1 chug on A. Okay, that's the first measure. Now repeat that. F major 7 with 2 chugs on A. And then the D minor 7, 2 chugs on A. And then we're just going to add a 3rd fret A power chord. Okay, so those two guitars coincide there at the very end. So the whole rhythmic figure is this. And then we get into the solo itself, the main part of the solo. And we're going to solo over this progression. So starts off fairly simple, A power chord, and we're going to be playing 8th notes here, but take the palm mute off on 1, the end of 2, and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And if you want to slow it right down, if the counting is kind of difficult at this point for you, then you're going to stab the A power chord, 2 palm mutes, stab 2 more palm mutes, stab 1 palm mute. Go up to that F that's rooted on the 3rd fret of the D string and do the same rhythm. Now we're going to come down to an E power chord and we play this. Okay, so hit the E power chord, 2 chugs on E. Now just hit the barred 2nd frets on the A and the D, hammering to the 3rd frets on A and D. Add an E chug, and then hit the 3rd frets, pulling back off to the 2nd. Okay, so put that together. Now 2 chugs on the open A, followed by an A power chord. F, E. And that gets us through our progression. Let's go through it nice and slow. Now that progression plays 4 times. However, there's a very minor change on the 4th time through. At the very end, instead of chugging twice on A stab, F, E, we're just going to chug the open A 4 times, F, E. So instead of this, we're just going to have this. All right, very minor change. Why they did it, I don't know, but it's there. Okay, so the whole time through that 4th and final time, just so you see the difference in context, it'll look like this. So that riff plays the 4 times, and then we get out of it by going F, G, A. Do that 3 times. And now the last time through that, you go F, G, E. Random slide. Back into the main riff. So there is the full rhythm underneath the solo. Let's slow it down with some scrolling tab. Moving on into the solo, here's a quick playthrough and then we'll break it down. So we start off with a bit of a solo before the solo, and it starts off. Okay, we're going to have an octave slide here, sliding from E on the 17th fret of B down to E on the 5th fret. Then, okay, so that's 6 and 5 on B, down to 7 and 4 on G, 5 on D, 7 on A, going up a half step to 8, back to 7. Okay, now we have okay, so we're on the 7th fret of the A string, skip up to the 5th fret of G, back to the 7 on D, then 5th fret of B down to 7 on G, sliding up to 8 on B, 9 on G, then 8 on E, 10 on B. Okay, and there's that whole melodic phrase. Let's just put it together really slow. Okay, now we get into the main part of the solo. Starts off with this. Okay, this is directly out of an A minor scale pattern. We're going to start on the 12th fret of the high string and then hammer to 13, pulling off to 12, 10, back to 12. Staying on that high string, we're going to go 13, pulling off to 12 and 10. And then pick these notes now, 13, 12, 10 on B, then 12, 10, 9 on G. Now we have this. Okay, so that's 12, pulling off to 10, 8, hammering back to 10, 8 on the B string. Coming down to G, we're going to pick 10. Now legato the rest of this. 9, 10, 12, 10, 9, 10, 9. Okay, let's put those two strings together. Finishing off with some eighth notes. Okay, so that's moving down to the D string. 12, 10, 12, 10, 9. Then 12 on A. Let's put that lick together. Now we have another easier phrase until we get to a tougher one again. Okay, that's 12, 14, 15 on A, 12, 14 on D, 12, 14 on G, then 12, 13 on B. So pick 12, 13 and then hammer pull that 12, 13. Down to 14 on G, back up to 12 on B, ending on 14 on G. Now we have... So we're moving back into the scale pattern that we started with. We're going to slide into 13, pulling off to 12 and 10. Okay, and now on the recording, those first two notes are really slurred together. It's not a evenly spaced set of 3. Okay, so we're going to pull those 3 notes off, coming down to 13 on B, back up to 10 on the high string. Now we're going to legato this all on the B string. 13, 12, 10, hammering to 12, back to 10. Okay, so let's put those 2 strings together. Okay, so when you arrive back at that 10th fret at the end, if you have some sort of a movable bridge system that's going to allow you to bend up a quarter or half a step, then this will work for you. Just lean on that, hit it twice. Okay, and you'll create that sound that you hear on the album. Okay, now we're coming down to the G string, and it's all legato, even the first note. We're going to hammer it out of nowhere. So we're going to hammer down to 12, 10. Now 12, 10, slide down to 9. 10, 12. 10, 9. Slide down to 7, back to 9. Okay, let's put all that together so far. Now we're going to hit an open E. Now a harmonic on the 12th fret of that high E string. Come down to the 8th fret of that high E. Pulling off to 5, open. And then we're going to bend the 7th fret on G, releasing that off to 5, back to 7. Okay, so let's put that whole lick together. Now, come up to the B string, 5, 6, 5, hammer pull, 7 on G, back to 5 on B, 7, 5 on G. So we have a run up an A minor scale, little neoclassical sequence at the top, coming down an A arpeggio, an A minor arpeggio. So start on the 4th fret of the B string, and then we're going to hit that 3 times, 5, 7. 5, 6, 8 on B, 5, 7, 8 on E. Then we're going to go 5, 7, 8, slide up to 10. 7, 8, 10, slide up to 12. And there is where we're going to come down our A minor arpeggio. So when you reach that 12th fret, pull off to 8. Now use sweep picking, all upstrokes here. 10 on B, 9 on G, 10 on D, 12 on A. Nice and slow. Now some melodic playing. So bend 15 on B, and as you bend that, we're going to use our pinky to hit the 15th fret on the high string at the same time. Now hit that bent 15 on B and release it. Come down to the 12th fret, do a little grace note hammer onto the 13th fret. Back to 12, 14 on G, back to 12 on B, and then 12 on G. Okay, so you'll have to think ahead just to kind of use that first finger on the 2 notes on the 12th fret. Okay, so that phrase nice and slow. Little trem pick up the high E string. 12, 13, 15, 17, 19, 20. Bending 20 on the B string to end that. Okay, now we're going to stay on that bent 20th fret, bend it again. Little melodic phrase to get into the ending of this. So we're on that 20th fret, release it, 18, 17, back to 18, then 19 and 17 on G, ending on the 19th fret on D. Now to end this, Okay, so we're on that 19th fret on D at the end of our last phrase. We're going to use that as our starting note to do a A minor sweep pick. Okay, so that is the 19th fret on D. And then roll your first finger across the 17th frets on G, B, and E. Try to really roll that finger so that the notes don't do you don't want them to blur together. You want to get nice, crisp, single notes there that flow together. Now we're going to come down those same notes, 17, 17 on B and G, 19 on D, 20, 19, 17 on A. Then we get into a brief falling third sequence, 19 on A, 20 on E, 17 on A, 19 on E, then 20 on E. Then we start our climb up the scale. 17, 19, 20 on E, 17, 19 on A, 17, 19 on D, 17, 19 on G, with one more bending the 19th fret on G. So nice and slow, that phrase. And there's the entire solo broken down for you. Let's put it together with some scrolling tab. So that's all the parts to the track, guys. You've officially learned Testament's Alone in the Dark. The very outro of the track just goes out on the main riff and a power chord stab to end it all. So the very last time through the riff. And that's it, just the A power chord at the end, done. So I hope you really enjoyed this lesson and got a lot out of it. I've got more Testament coming soon, so please like and subscribe if you want to see more of it, and I'll see you soon.